Yes, I would say that the hunting horn is a support weapon, almost specifically designed around buffing the party, the glorified hammer, and weaker than the hammer. So yeah, it was completely designed around being a support weapon.
So yeah, it was completely designed around being a support weapon. So yeah, it was completely designed around being a support weapon.
What? What the fuck?
Well, let's talk about hunting horn.
Throughout my time playing Monster Hunter, I have rarely deviated from my favorite weapon type, often opting to stick with something tried and true instead of experimenting with anything I haven't really played before. However, thanks to a large rework in Monster Hunter Rise, the hunting horn has been on the top of my radar. The hunting horn has potentially received one of the biggest gameplay shifts out of all the weapons in the series. A weapon that was considered to be the least popular to use overall seems to be exploding in popularity with only the release of the Rise demo. I asked a lot of you in the previous video what weapon you would like me to cover next, and honestly there was a vocal outcry for every single one. Except bow, so, get shit on, bow mains. So I'll be using the comments section to gauge viewer opinions and decide when to cover each weapon. And I will be covering all of them, so don't worry. Eventually yours will be covered whether that is before or after the release of Rise. So consider subscribing and be sure to stick around. I'm Super Rad, and this is the history of the hunting horn. Monster Hunter Dose to Freedom Unite would introduce the hunting horn to the series. In many ways it was very similar in design to the hammer, albeit extremely weaker. However, the hunting horn attempted to make up for this in two ways. First, the reach of the weapon was longer and attacks were faster than a typical hammer, meaning users had more mobility and range to work with within a hunt. Second was what made the hunting horn truly unique, the recital ability. By pressing the recital button, the R button in Freedom Unite, hunters could enter recital mode, which would allow them to play various sequences of notes while mostly stationary. Players could even unsheath immediately into recital mode with the right combination of buttons. While in this mode, the hunter can attack, but the majority of these attacks are centered around mobility, allowing the hunter to evade monsters while continuing to play and changing the type of note they create. Each horn will have 3 different colored notes that the hunter can play. These colors can be different between each weapon, meaning the possible combos that can be played in recital mode are also different. For example, playing the white note followed by the red note on the bone horn will provide an attack up boost to you and the party. The different attacks you can perform in recital mode are what dictate which notes will be played. One unique song that is available to all horns is the drift speed up ability, which is activated by performing 2 white notes in a row or 2 purple notes if you have a higher rank weapon. This is an incredibly important ability for hunting horn users as it dramatically increases their movement speed with their weapon unsheathed. These songs could even be comboed into one another. Say you activate Health Up, which is a red, blue, and then white recital. You can then follow up with another white note to activate Drift Speed, and then another red note to activate Attack Up. Another big aspect of song combos is simply replaying the same combination. Many songs have additional effects if played twice, or they may simply refresh the timer. By playing white into white, the user gets the drift speed buff, and by performing white into white again, they gain the minor ESP boost, allowing the hunter to not only move faster, but also bounce off of the monsters less. This isn't limited to the self-improvement buffs either. By repeating melodies that give you something like Attack Up S, you can replace it with Attack Up L. The weapon had multiple other subtle nuances. It contained an infinite combo ability by simply pressing triangle over and over to perform an upward swing, which could be angled with the analog stick, and as an impact weapon it could knock out monsters, leaving them open for big damage. Honestly, out of any weapon in the series at this point, Hunting Horn shined as a truly unique addition that contained an incredible amount of depth within its moveset. I also just want to point out that the speed boost makes Hunting Horn the fastest weapon in the game in terms of movement, and yes, that's even faster than Sword and Shield. This aspect of it would persist throughout the generations. You may not remember this, but many weapons introduced in Gen 2 or earlier did not make an appearance in Monster Hunter Tri. One of the weapons omitted was Hunting Horn, and we wouldn't see the weapon again until Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. While originally appearing in the second generation, both players introduced to Monster Hunter in Tri and Veterans would basically be picking up a brand new weapon altogether, thanks to the first of multiple large reworks around the weapon. The biggest change to the weapon involves Recital Mode, which has been combined into the weapon's main combos and attacks, rather than forcing the hunter into a dedicated stance in order to play. Once the right combination of notes has been played, the hunter can activate the melody, which will throw them into the recital stance temporarily as they play their melody and activate the effect. This leaves the hunter temporarily vulnerable, but much less so than in the second generation of games. Overall, the weapon became much more versatile in comparison to its Gen 2 counterpart, thanks to lowering the amount of time that the hunter was slowed down or stuck in place. The trade-off for this, however, was the loss of being able to combo melodies. Since Gen 2 would automatically activate a buff as you played the proper sequence of notes, you could combo into multiple buffs fairly easily. Gen 3 looked to balance this by having the hunter able to store up to 4 notes, but only activate one combination of them. Let's say you want to activate a 3-note ability, but the last note of said ability could combo into a 2-note ability, meaning you could theoretically get 2 buffs with one recital. This isn't possible, as the latest notes played will dictate which combo gets activated. Other small aspects of the weapon, like its infinite, have been changed slightly. Hunters could now combo through triangle to circle and repeat for a dedicated infinite. Additionally, the select button could perform a hilt stab similar to the old circle button attack, but faster and for less damage. This move would even generate a note and was mostly utilized for getting notes ready quickly ahead of time or performing a recital immediately after, which would have a different animation known as a quick recital. Now, one of the biggest and most useful additions to be introduced in this generation has to be the Encore ability. As I mentioned, pressing R after playing a proper combination of notes will activate a buff effect. If that buff effect is multi-leveled, playing it a second time will boost it to its next tier. Now the fun part is that the devs realized playing the same combo twice is absolutely ridiculous when you have a giant angry monster charging toward you throughout the fight. So hunters can now opt to extend their recital into an encore. By pressing R, you begin the recital, and by pressing it again, you extend the combo and activate the same ability a second time, automatically boosting it. Something like Defense Up S can automatically go up to Defense L within the same combo. However, from what I could gather, the Encore wasn't actually used that often in high level play. Despite its apparent advantages, being stuck in an extended recital animation for too long was incredibly dangerous. Most players seemed to opt for an evade to cancel the recital animation, as it would save time and allow them to reposition and attack as necessary. In Gen 4, many of the typical attacks launch fellow hunters for free aerial attacks. Speaking of aerial attacks, the Hunting Horn can perform the same aerial slam with either X, A, or the X plus A combination, and each will allow the hunter to acquire a specific note. Another large change is the double swing or flourish mechanic. Hunters that press forward and circle on their gamepad will perform a double swing move that acts as 2 attacks. However, during the middle of the flourish, hunters can input an extra move that will allow for a free note to be generated. An example of this would be the user pressing forward and circle to perform the double swing, which generates a blue note depending on the weapon, and can then press triangle mid-swing to get a free white note. This can be done for all note types, making it incredibly useful for quickly pumping out melody combinations. Now, Generations, as we all know, adds various styles to each weapon to make them incredibly unique depending on which one you pick up. But Hunting Horn actually received several new mechanics outside of styles to help promote a more aggressive playstyle. Originally, hunters could swing willy-nilly without actually hitting anything and they'd get notes regardless. While that's still the case, hunters are encouraged to actually attack the monster now thanks to the mechanic known as special or double notes. These special notes function similarly to your normal notes, but can only be obtained by performing an attack that actually connects against a monster. By using recitals with only special notes, you will not only play the song you have slotted in, but also play the last song used previously. Think of this as a way of getting a new set of buffs while encoring your previous song. If you haven't used a previous song, this is a great way to get both effects of self-improvement in one combo without the need to use an encore. Some of you may be wondering why they began to promote such aggressive play, and I'll actually get into why this might be the case later. Like the last video, I won't go into all of the styles. The main differences in each are the possibility of removing double notes in favor of some old school moves and changing certain combos with the weapon, but it's nothing we haven't seen before. If you're curious which option was used by most speedrunners, it seems like guild style was best. I suggest trying them out yourself to see what feels best for you. One very useful hunter art will actually let you perform special notes regardless of whether or not you hit the monster, which is useful when you need to get a big buff boost whether you're near a monster or not. Valor mode makes the weapon even more aggressive, allowing for recitals to perform incredibly flashy, high damage attacks, but some of the mechanics with Valor seem to limit the hunting horn's ability to actually, play music. If I were to use the Valor evade, I'd automatically sheath my weapon, which may interrupt or mess up my combination of notes I'm building. That being said, Generations Ultimate introduced a new art for Hunting Horn that makes it so your recital and encore have iframes, allowing the user to play certain songs and, if timed right, dodge attacks safely while doing so. This is something we actually see brought over into Rise, but we'll get to that shortly. Okay, I am not a Hunting Horn main, so bear with me while I attempt to explain some of the most confusing but incredibly interesting changes World introduced with the weapon, namely the ability to cue melodies. Each time you play a valid combination of notes, they get added to your song bank, and each Hunting Horn user can store up to 3 of these at a time, with the oldest getting pushed out whenever you play a new combination. The hunter can dictate which of the songs in their bank to play by combining the recital button with their attack buttons. To play the first song, press the recital button. To play the second, instead, press circle and recital together, and finally, press recital and triangle for the third. Queuing songs also reintroduces the combo or bridging mechanic from Generation 2. By stalking one song, you can continue attacking to bridge the notes you just played into the notes of another melody, meaning certain songs can be strung into others for efficient banking. Encore remains the same if you only have one song stocked, allowing the user to easily replay it, but the big differences lie in how Encore functions with multiple songs queued. This is probably, to me at least, one of the biggest buffs Hunting Horn has ever received. If the user has 3 songs queued and presses recital once, they will take time to play all the songs in the list as one unless interrupted, either by being attacked or evading. They can even decide to encore all of the songs at once, leading to huge, long-lasting buffs for the Hunting Horn user and their party. It's seriously insane in comparison to the older designs of the weapon. One thing to note is that the double notes from Generation do not make their return. Instead, pressing triangle and circle together will visually look like a double note, but function as you would expect a Gen 3 or early Gen 4 horn to. Like other weapons, Iceborne introduced some new moves and mechanics for the Hunting Horn. Echo Attack is a new move performed by pressing L2 after a traditional attack. It's a multi-hit move with high KO damage, making it incredibly useful to use when attempting to knock out a monster. On top of the high knockout, it introduces a new unique note to the horn, which can be used to generate unique combos and melodies, specifically tailored to the type of Hunting Horn being used. This special note can be combined with the second or third note available to the Hunting Horn to generate a new melody that is dependent on the type of Hunting Horn being used. For example, when I recorded this footage, I used the Raging Brachydios Hunting Horn and had access to the Dragon Echo Wave ability, which is a low KO but potentially high damage attack. Another weapon may have Impact Echo Wave, which has increased KO values, which makes it better for knocking out monsters. The second ability places a bubble on the ground for the party to utilize by walking through. For the weapon I used in this example, it was the speed plus evasion boost buff, where if I were to walk through it, I'd gain a speed boost similar to self-improvement and an evasion boost, while party members would only receive the evasion boost. Okay, if you thought Hunting Horn was already receiving a lot of reworks, get ready, because it is almost an entirely different weapon in Monster Hunter Rise. We'll of course be mostly focusing on the additions and changes to the weapon itself, as not all Silkbind moves are available within the demo. But don't worry, I will discuss the mechanics of the ones we can currently use. The biggest change is how melodies activate. No longer are you focusing on 2 to 4 note combos before activating your ability. Instead, possible buffs are listed for you, and simply performing the combo will activate them automatically, without needing to perform a recital, saving a large amount of time when attacking the monster. Self-improvement can be activated in multiple ways, the easiest of which is by simply pressing ZR, which will perform a special attack that generates iframes during the initial part of the animation. While the speed boost is there, it's unclear if the ability also applies Mind's Eye, as Encore is no longer an aspect of the weapon, meaning hunters can no longer boost the effect of moves by replaying them. A new combo called Magnificent Trio becomes available when the hunter has played one of each possible note. The notes don't need to stay on the melody chart for this ability to remain active, and it's a very effective, high damage multi-hit combo that decimates any monster that it touches. A brand new mechanic is the circular gauge that charges as the hunter attacks. Once full, this allows the hunter to perform the Song of Raging Flame out of their Magnificent Trio combo. It's a multi-hit move with the same animation as Echo Wave, but instead of providing a special note on the chart, it instead provides an additional attack boost. There's a good chance that some of these buffs and the effects of the Echo Wave will depend on the type of the hunting horn the player is using at the time, so more information will be available once the game is fully released. Additionally, in previous games, the draw attack of the weapon would apply a note right away. Now, a hunting horn main can draw attack and immediately press one of the corresponding attack buttons to get the note of their choosing, making the weapon much more versatile when it comes to planning out melodies. Finally, we have the two Silkbind moves that have been showcased. The first of which is a combo maneuver that provides super armor, meaning that the hunter cannot be knocked out of it, but can still take damage. The hunter can combo a recital out of it to apply self-improvement, and if their gauge is full, also combo out of an Echo Wave for Song of Raging Flame. The second Silkbind ability seems to be simply an incredibly high damage attack with a large buildup that seems perfect for when a monster is downed. All in all, the hunting horn in Rise is almost a completely new weapon in comparison to World and Iceborne, which was very different in comparison to Gen 3 and 4, which were completely different in comparison to Generation 2. Truly, the hunting horn had some of the biggest facelifts throughout the entirety of the series. Something I learned really quickly is that the way you classify a weapon can be a sensitive topic for dedicated hunters, especially hunting horn mains, especially hunting horn mains. Hunting horn mains are very outspoken and dedicated. While I won't discuss whether or not the weapon is considered support or not, although I do have my own opinions on it, it's clear there is an issue with some of the player base misunderstanding the weapon due to the classification. A hilarious term I've heard used is corner horners, describing hunting horn mains that would rather keep their distance and buff the party rather than getting directly into the fray. I think a lot of the facelifts throughout the series all had the same goal in mind: make the weapon more versatile and promote the player engaging with the monster. We saw this in Gen 3 when they removed the dedicated recital stance and introduced Encore. We saw this in Generations with the ability to produce double notes. We saw this in World with song stacking and recital combos producing high damage, and we have really seen this in Rise with the hunting horn being one of the highest performing weapons in the demo. Support or not, the hunting horn is an incredibly versatile weapon and very useful in taking down any monster, whether solo or in a party. I do feel like Rise may be oversimplifying the weapon slightly, removing mechanics like Encore and making melodies incredibly easy to cast. To me, it looked like the main appeal of the weapon was its depth, and I think some of that has been lost here. However, like I mentioned previously, the weapon was apparently one of the least popular in the franchise, so I expect we'll see that change in Rise. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today in regards to the hunting horn. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Let me know what your favorite weapon is and what weapon you want me to cover next. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I will see you in the next video.
Hey, it's me again here. Just want to give one more big shout out to Dayz for allowing me to use their footage and also helping proofread the script. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Their YouTube channel will be in the description, so feel free to check them out. Very talented hunting horn player, very talented speedrunner. Give them a follow.